Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I am Dr. Claudia Albers, Planet X research and professional physicist. And today I'd like to bring to you another one of my articles. This one is entitled The Secret Space Program. Now, with the discovery that we are living in an electrical universe, and this based on my research into the Planet X objects, which have invaded our inner solar system, and I have written extensively about these in many of the articles, and I have just a few here which you will see in the references. It should not be surprising that the powers that be that are hiding the existence of these old burnt out stars and the effects they are having on the sun from the Earth's population have also used that knowledge to navigate through outer space in order to perhaps visit other planets in the solar system or even other star systems. So the truth actually seems to be that the fact that the universe is electrical and it is possible to navigate through the universe and using an electromagnetic mode of transportation. In fact, it was known, this kind of technology was known to human beings during, well, before and during the Second World War, as Nazi scientists developed a secret space program then. So what we are told nowadays, the public program, which is run by NASA, tells the world's population that the only way to navigate outer space is through the use of rockets, which is definitely not the case, since in the 1930s and 1940s, these kind of spaceship were developed by Nazi scientists. As you can see, they saucer shaped, and they were able to hover, as you can see this one here, and this shows that they were using an anti-gravitic propulsion system, in other words electromagnetics, to move within the Earth's atmosphere. And they were in fact so successful that there is evidence that they actually built a base on the moon, and you see a photograph of it here. So this means that they had to be able to develop technology in order to fly through the Earth's atmosphere. They had to be able to get to the moon, and they would have to be able to shield the occupants of these spacecraft from the energetic particles that come from the solar wind and would affect and impact these spacecraft once they moved outside the Earth's atmosphere. And the Earth's ionosphere protects the lower layers of the Earth's atmosphere from these high energy particles in the solar wind. But organisms, living beings, human beings, animals, plants traveling outside the ionosphere would be impacted by this radiation. And this radiation can destroy DNA, can destroy cells, it can lead to mutations and thus to cancer. So it's unlikely that a human being can survive this kind of bombardment for very long. So, and in fact, these particles also affect electronic equipment. They also cause extra currents which can destroy this electronic equipment because these are charged particles. So this means that whatever craft they used had to have electrostatic forces not only to propel themselves, but they had to generate enough of these forces to deflect such particles. And if they were able to create strong electric forces, they would most likely be able to generate magnetic fields as well. And as we know, these deflect such particles. This is what happens with the Earth. The Earth's magnetosphere deflects charged particles. Now here we see some images of the moon. As you can see, the moon seems to be airless, that is just about no atmosphere. So this would mean that they would have to develop the ability to not only shield the ships and the occupants, they would have to be able to carry large amounts of material to the moon in order to build a base, and they would have to develop spacesuits in order to protect their personnel from the airless environment. So this is a lot of technology that would have had to have been developed then in the 1930s and the 1940s. So it's again surprising that we seem to still be using rockets. Now, as I have written in several articles, such as Article 67, Stellar Core Gravitation and Eris, we are actually living in an electrical universe. It's not a gravitational one. And thus, what we are taught is the gravitational interaction is actually a weak electrostatic interaction, which arises from the environment the Earth is in. So it's not surprising that strong electric fields can result in what seems to be an anti-gravitic effect. That is, strong electric fields are able to influence the Earth's natural weak electrostatic field, which we call the gravitational field, and are able to either shield against it or cancel it, and that's what anti-gravity is, or sometimes called electrogravitic propulsion systems. And in fact, I have written as well in my the previous article 114, entitled "The Truth About Planet X and CERN," that mass itself can be described in particle physics as arising as a result of the electromagnetic interaction, which is mediated by the photon. Now, what happens whenever an electrogravitic effect is observed is that the generation of electric field affects the Earth's natural electrostatic field. And this natural electrostatic field is what we perceive as the Earth's gravitational field. But this field is generated from the polarization of particles, and these are the particles the Earth is made out of, and these have this polarization, that is the shaping of the atom itself, which is made out of positive parts and negative parts, and these particles are shape themselves in a way in response to the prevailing fields that the Earth's solar system environment is like. So whatever fields are generated by the sun or generated between the sun and other stars outside the solar system, this is the environment that the Earth is in, and that environment leads to the production of a certain field, which we call the gravitational field, but it's actually a weak electrostatic field. Thus, a strong electric field can have an anti-gravitic effect by changing the Earth's field environment. Now, this electrostatic force was already known to provide a type of propulsion by the beginning of the 20th century, when this type of this is a cathode ray tube, was actually state-of-the-art lab equipment just before the beginning of the 20th century, or at the end of the 19th century. And it was discovered then that if one of the electrodes, you have a cathode and an anode, these are the electrodes, if one of them is larger than the other and you apply a large electric potential across them, then there is this propelling effect, or in other words, the tube itself accelerates in the direction of the larger electrode. So it was known already then that you can use high electric potentials to cause an acceleration, and it can, of course, also cause the electrogravitic effect or the anti-gravity effect. And in his book, The Hunt for Zero Point, Nick Cook documents how Nazi scientists, which were involved in the development of this German secret space program, were absorbed by the United States at the end of the Second World War. So it is thus expected that the United States would use their knowledge to build their own secret space program. And since the technology to go to the moon and build a base there had already been developed by these scientists, it is actually inconceivable that rockets, which is actually brute force compared with the elegance of electromagnetics, would be used by the people who in NASA who landed on the moon in 1969. Instead, this shows that that moon landing was actually a propaganda program and most likely designed to tell the Earth's population that the technology that had been developed up to then did not actually exist. And as we know, the lies coming from NASA have not stopped since then, and they are actively hiding the fact that we have old stars that are affecting our sun inside the inner solar system and in the sun's corona. And as we see here, this is a triangular shaped spacecraft that seems to have been developed by the space program arising after the Second World War. This is a modern spacecraft, and there may actually be several secret space programs, but one particular one known as Space Warden was actually discovered by someone called Gary McKinnon, and he was a hacker, and he hacked into what he said was called the U.S. Space Command several times over a period lasting over a year, starting in February of 2001. So he found that this secret space program operates a space fleet, which comprises of several at least two types of ships. Very large ones called motherships, and these seem to be about 700 feet in length, and they appear to have several of these, maybe 8, and there were some 40 smaller scout ships in this fleet, and he described this program as having about 300 personnel, and that they operated under what was called the U.S. Naval Network and Space Operations Command. And here we see another one of these spacecraft that seem to have been developed by this secret space program. So, in conclusion, the fact that we live in an electrical universe makes the possibility of space flight using electromagnetic propulsion methods attainable, and it appears that the powers that be have taken full advantage of that, whilst continuing to keep the greater part of the Earth's population in the dark as to the true nature of the universe and the technological advances they have been able to make as a result of that knowledge. And here you see the references if you are interested. This is Dr. Claudia Albers, Planet X physicist. Thank you for watching.